vaccinated, how can the floodgates open in just a few short weeks to that community? Some doctors are saying we need to ring fence some zones until they catch up to the state average.
Well, obviously, some communities like Byron have a larger percentage of people who choose not to be vaccinated. That's their choice, but they won't be able to participate in the activities vaccinated people will. And as we get closer to that time, Dr. Chant and the Health Department will give government advice on how we deal with those communities, but also more broadly, how we deal with communities that might have high rates of disease still in them at the time. And as I foreshadowed the day we announced and released the roadmap, it could be a situation where if case numbers are too high when we open up the state, that if you live in a community or in a category of person who has those high rates of the virus, we might have to say to you, for the next little while, do all those things that you're allowed to do, but do them within your local area. So we have all those options, and of course, as we get closer to that time, Health will be able to provide us with their advice. But there's no doubt that we do look at the two issues we look at are the high vaccination or the vaccination rates, but also the prevalence of disease. So obviously, in parts of rural and regional New South Wales, it's much easier to isolate communities or to at least provide direction for communities because there's a distinction between townships. It's much more difficult in urbanised areas, and that's why we look forward to getting the health advice as we do. We get it every day, but obviously as we get closer to that 70% double dose figure, we'll be able to give the community greater advice and information, but all of us will be able to follow the numbers on a daily basis anyway. And again, the two most important numbers are the vaccination rate and the hospitalisation rate, how many people we can keep out of hospital, and we will continue to monitor that leading up to the 70% figure. But as I said, we're doing incredibly well in the pace of our vaccination program. We had a slight slowing down this week. We believe because there's a bit of a gap between first dose and second dose, but we don't want anyone who hasn't been vaccinated yet to sit at home. We want you to come out, get vaccinated, do your bit for yourself, your family, and also remember that people might say, well, if you're not vaccinated, that's on you and you might get sick. Well, no, unvaccinated people spread the disease much more readily. So if you're in a venue or if you're somewhere and there's unvaccinated people, you have more chance of getting the disease from them because they don't have that protection. So it is about thinking about the greater good as well, not just yourself. It's about thinking about your loved ones and your community.
Premier, you just made some strong statements about hospitality and that 70% imposition rule, and people can't go into those sorts of venues without being double vaxxed. Last week you said that order would be sometimes up to the business themselves rather than the state. But now you're very clear. There will be a health order to clarify that. Can you give us more information on that? And what will happen to restaurants and pubs? And we're seeing more of them who say they don't care, they will accept anybody unvaccinated as well as vaccinated.
Firstly, I didn't actually say that. What I said was at 80%, we're still looking at what is going to happen at 80%. But at 70%, we've been extremely clear and extremely black and white. There is no doubt as to what we said when we announced the roadmap. At 70%, if you're not vaccinated, there will be a health order. It will be the law that if you're not vaccinated, you can't attend those venues that are on our roadmap. You can't go into a hospitality venue. You can't go to ticketed events unless you are vaccinated. We made that very clear for 70% double dose. What I also said that day is that we're considering what 80% double dose looks like. Because again, what we need to consider is not only what the unvaccinated population could do to our hospital system, but the rate at which disease can still spread if too many people are unvaccinated. So let me again be very clear, at 70% double dose, it is a requirement that you are only allowed to enter any hospitality venue or any of those or receive services like hairdressers, etc., if you are double dosed. And that will be in law, it'll be in a health order, and there'll be no grey. It's very black and white.
So the business will be prosecuted. Just can I follow that, Premier?
Yes, we've already made that very clear that both staff at 70% double dose, all staff and all patrons will need to be fully vaccinated because we can't afford to have 30%. Imagine if 30% of our adult population all got the virus, a large proportion got ill, our hospital system would be overrun. We've made this very, very clear from the outset. This is consistent with the Doherty plan, it's consistent with the national plan, and it's consistent with what we've been saying. At 70% double dose, there is no question. unvaccinated people will not be able to utilise hospitality venues. They won't be allowed into particular events. They won't be allowed into particular indoor settings. They are the rules based on health advice, based on the national plan. And what our government is currently doing is working towards what 80% looks like.